Hello again. We're dropping off a new one here in Lopezlandia. Today we're going to be working on 4.5 graphs of sine and cosine. Graphs, guess what? You need to have your notebook, pen, pencil, calculator, a straight edge. You're going to need it. Your unit circle. Open it up. Get ready to watch it. We're going to do some graphing. Let's continue, please. All right. So students will learn how to identify the graphs of sine and cosine, identify the properties of sine and cosine, graph the parent graphs of sine and cosine. All right, so when we're graphing, what you want to think about is peeling or pulling off the unit circle in order to create a sine graph or a cosine graph. That's technically what you're kind of seeing here. Let's continue, por favor. All right, you don't have to write anything down. I just want you to look at it so you can see what's going on. So you have a crusty graph ready to go with your x and your y axis or your theta axis. You have your x and sine of x, so the output table. Where are these numbers coming from? So great question. I'm glad you asked. So if we look at our wonderful, wonderful unit circle, and notice that we have 0, 0, which is right here. I'm looking at this right here. Okay, and if I asked you what the sine of 0, you would say it's going to be 0. Remember, it's x comma y, cosine, and sine. So our y coordinate is going to be sine. So notice that the next one is pi over 6, which is over here. So if I asked you what is the sine of pi over 6, you would have said 1/2. That's where it's coming from. Pi over 3, it's over here. What's a sine? Square root of 3 over 2. And if I asked you for a decimal approximation, you would say approximately 0.8. We are going to graph this quickly. Just watch. So that's a 0, 0. We're just following what's in my table there. Okay. I'm not giving you absolutely everything, but I'm giving you the major points here. And this is what you should see when you are graphing a sine function. All right. Look at how cute it is. Hard eyes. Let's move on. Oh no, we're having tech difficulties. No, we're not. We're good. Okay, so properties of sine and cosine. This you do want to copy down. So it says suppose y equals a sine b theta. So sometimes you're going to see a theta here. Sometimes you're going to see an x. Treat it in the same manner, please. A cannot be 0. B is going to be greater than 0. And theta will be in radian. So absolute value of A will be the amplitude of the function. B will be the number of cycles in the interval of 0 to 2 pi. And then 2 pi divided by B, that's how we're going to find the period of the function, all right? Now, there's also going to be a 5-point method for sine. And for sine, our 5-point method will be 0. Maximum point, 0, minimum, and then 0. This will make more sense once we get into some graphing. Let's carry on. Oh, I still had it here. Oh, yeah, Lopez. Sorry, guys. You can copy it again. Either way. So, when you're graphing sine, you're going to use the 5-point method, which I was talking about, 0 max, 0 min, 0. Copy that down, please. And you want to make sure that you're dividing the period by 4. Again, you're going to see me do that in the examples. You want to determine what the amplitude is based on your A value in the equation. And then you want to determine how many cycles will appear in the interval of 0 to 2 pi. So make sure you pause here and you copy everything, please. All right, let's start off with our first one, graphing sine. For this one, they're not even giving me an equation. We just have bits and pieces of it. So here they're telling me that the period is 2 pi and my amplitude is 1. I'm still going to pay attention to my 5-point method. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the period and divide it by 4. So the period was 2 pi, divide that by 4. Okay, this simplifies to pi over 2, or pi halves. So notice that I already have my little marks to show the increment. So when I divide the period by 4, whatever I get here, that's going to be our first one that we get here. And what that's telling me is that between each mark, each increment, the distance there will be pi over 2 for this particular problem, okay? So in order to get the next one, all we're going to do is just add. So pi over 2 plus pi over 2, boop, boop, boop. That's going to be 2 pi over 2, right? You could simplify and that'll become a pi. Let's get the next one. So this is going to be 3 pi halves. Again, if you're able to simplify, do that. You want to keep it as an improper fraction. And then we have our lovely 3 halves plus another pi over 2. Boo, boo, boo. And here again, you should be able to simplify. And we should end up with 2 pi. Don't forget about the amplitude. So we need some markings on my y-axis. Again, this is going to be x, or you could call it the theta axis. Either one. All right, +1, -1, and this is based off of my amplitude. And now we're talking about the 0 max, 0 min, 0. So what do I mean by that? Let me quickly show you the whole curve, and then I'll put in the points because I'm afraid that I might miss the mark like I have in the past. Okay, so by 0, we're starting at 0, 0. And then maximum, what was the amplitude, was 1. So our max value would have to be a +1. Now we're going back to the x-axis where your y value here is 0, right? And then if we look at 3 pi over 2, we're going to go to the minimum, which is at -1. And we're back to the x-axis, all right? Which, again, your y value there is at 0, okay? Let's carry on. All right, so we're going to be graphing sine here as well. Determine what the amplitude and the period are, and then graph one period or one cycle. All right, so we have that. We're not going to necessarily graph it here. We're just going to identify the parts, and then on the next slide, we will be graphing it. Okay, so let me give you the equation. Hello. All right, so my a value is going to be a -3. And then my b value is 2. Yes, my a value is a -3. But if you tell me that my amplitude is a -3, that's going to be no bueno. The lope is going to get really mad. So remember, it's the absolute value of a. So for us, it'd be the absolute value of -3, which is 3. That's our amplitude, okay? Don't forget about that, please. All right, and then we said our b value was 2. I need to figure out what the period is. I gave you a crusty little formula for that, which was 2 pi divided by b. So this is going to be 2 pi divided by 2. Okay, so we simplify. Yeah, so the period is going to be pi. Okay, now I need to figure out what my little increments are going to be at, remember? Because we're going to apply the 5-point method. So in order to do that, we said we're going to take the period, which in this case is pi, and we're going to divide it by 4. Well, there's nothing to do. Each one of those markings will be pi over, what did I say 2? Sorry. Each one of those markings will be pi over 4 distance away. So for the first one, this will be pi over 4. To get the next one, you're going to add another pi over 4. So this is going to be 2 pi over 4. Simplify. This is going to be pi over 2 when you simplify. Yes, in English? Yes. Add another pi over 4. This is going to be 3 pi over 4. You can't simplify there, so there you go. And then we're going to add another pi over 4, which is 4 pi over 4. That simplifies to just pi, okay? And we're going to actually graph it on the next one. Here we go. All right, so here we go again. Let's go ahead and include what we just found. So this should have been pi over 4. Hopefully it starts writing right away. Oh, there it is. Pi over 4. That should have been pi over 2. This should have been 3 pi fourths. And then pi. Remember, our a was a -3. So, and our amplitude was absolute value of -3. So let me put in a 3 here, -3 there, x or theta, whatever you want to call it here. Okay, my a value was negative. because my A value is negative, the graph will reflect. So it'll flip, if you will. So instead of my usual 0 max, 0 min, 0, we're still going to start at 0, but it's going to reflect. So instead of the max, now it's going to be to the minimum. And then we're going to go back to 0 on the x-axis. We're going to go now to the max, and now we're going to go to 0. We're going to go ahead and connect those lovely, lovely points. And our graph of sine for this equation, oh my gosh, would look something like that. Okay, now let's continue, por favor. All right, properties of cosine. You technically have it already from a couple slides ago. So the only thing I would add here really, or the only thing you should really copy now would be the 5-point method, which now it's going to be a little different than the one in comparison to sine. So now it'll be max, 0, min, 0, max. Make sure you have that part, all right? Again, the other part you should have had already. Hopefully you do. All right, let's go ahead and do one. Here's another example. Now we're going to determine what the amplitude and the period are. Then we're going to graph one period or one cycle of the equation. All right, so now we have y equals 2 cosine 2x. All right, so let's go ahead and identify the a value. The a value is going to be 2, and my b value is going to be 2. And therefore, the amplitude is the absolute value of a, which is 2. That is my amplitude. The b value, if I were to graph all the way to 2 pi, I would see 2 complete cycles. That's what it's saying here for the b value. So my b is 2. Let's figure out the period. So the period again will be 2 pi divided by b, or 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. Okay. Now we need to take the pi and divide that by 4 in order to start my 5-point method. Okay, so what do we get here? We get pi over 4. And this is similar to one that we had done already. So already start the work here. Since we divided the period by 4 and we got pi over 4, that's the first one that goes here. Then we continue adding by pi over 4 because each one of those are equal and distant. So that's going to be 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. And then we're going to add another pi over 4. Sorry, I have my numbers all crazy today. And that should be 3 pi over 4. And we're going to add another one. And that'll give us 4 pi over 4. Again, that'll simplify. And that'll just give us pi here. Okay, so make sure you have that. We're going to finish graphing it on the next one. All right, so I forgot to cross out sine and put cosine. Oh my God. Go ahead and start drawing your x and y axis and include the increments that I have as well. Okay, so again, as a reminder, your amplitude was 2, your a value is 2, so make sure you include it on your y-axis. Now, things are going to be a little different with cosine, like I had mentioned before. So our 5-point method will be max 0, minimum 0, max. So maximum. Now we're actually on the y-axis. And then we're going to go to 0. So that means we're going to go to the x-axis here. That's right there. And then we're going to be at the minimum, 0, and then maximum. So it's looking something like this one. And then again, it would repeat because it's periodic. Let's try another. Okay. So same directions, don't copy that, just copy down the equation. Just like with the other one, we're going to go ahead and identify the amplitude and the period. So my a value is a -1. So absolute value of -1, that's going to be 1. My amplitude is 1. All right, my b value is 1/3. What does that mean to us? That means that if I were to graph all the way to 2 pi, I would see a third of a cycle. I wouldn't see a full cosine cycle. Okay, so be careful with that. That's what that means. Let's figure out what the period's going to be. Again, the period is 2 pi divided by b. So for us, this will be 2 pi divided by 1/3. Yes, we have a beautiful complex fraction. All right. I'm going to go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of the second already. So it's going to be 3/1. Okay. So that should give us 6 pi. The period here is 6 pi. Okay. So I'm going to start my little crusty graph already. Okay. So now I need to take the period, which is 6 pi, and divide it by 4 to get my little even increments over here. That I could simplify, right? Each one's divisible by 2. So this should be 3 pi over 2. And that's going to go here. And we're going to continue with that. So let me do it over here. 3 pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2. So that's going to be 3 pi's. Yes? Yes in English? Yes. All right, sorry guys, I was having technical difficulties. So once we got the 3 pi, which is coming from the 6 pi over 2, I added another 3 pi over 2, which ends up being 9 pi over 2. You can't simplify that one, leave it alone. So I added another 3 pi over 2, so we end up with 12 pi over 2. I simplified, and that's how we ended up with 6 pi. Let's finish graphing it on the next one, all right? Okay, so I already included most of the items that we needed for the graph. Okay, I need to pay attention to my 5-point method. So there it is again. So it's max 0, min 0, max. Okay, our a value again was a negative value. So just like with the sine one that we had, this one also will reflect. So instead of max, it's going to be minimum, okay? Because your a value was a negative to begin with, then it'll be at 0, then it'll be to the max, then at 0, and then to the max again. Go ahead and connect your beautiful points, and that would be one cycle there for this cosine function. All right, guys, we're all done with this one. See you in the next one. Bye.